Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 3 of my Blender video tutorial. In this part of the tutorial, I'm going to finish up covering all the Generate modifiers, including Screw, Skin, Solidify, Triangulate, Wireframe, Subdivision, and the Remesh modifiers. And like always, there is a text version of everything I do here in the description underneath the video. And I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so here we are inside of Blender, and I'm going to just delete this. Alright, the very first thing I'm going to do is cover the Screw modifier, which is very similar to the previous Screw tool that we covered. And what we want to do here is create another spring or hose or whatever you want to think of it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch to front orthographic view. So I'm going to get 1 and 5, and there it is. And you can see down here is everything that I type in, and you're going to be able to see up here that I have front orthographic. Okay, and if you can't see everything, just view it full screen. It's an HD video. So very first thing I want to do is I want to create a circle, and what I do, I hit the wrong button. So let's keep our 3D cursor in the middle of the screen, and I'm going to go Shift A, and I'm going to create a circle, and you can see the circle right there. Then I want to rotate said circle, so I'm going to go rotate X plus 90, and now I'll be able to see it on the screen instead of seeing half of it. And I'm going to left click to place said circle, and now what I want to do is I want to shrink this down in size, so I can shrink. Let's say I wanted to shrink it in half. I can go shrink with an S followed by 0.5 and enter, and that's how easy that was. And then I'm gonna basically just make like a spring type shape. So I'm just going to grab this axis here, move it over a couple spaces, and drop it down inside of there. Then what I'm going to want to do is I want to basically set the location for our object so that it is at 0, 0. See, it's all over the place. And to do that, what you can do is go Control and A in a location, and now you can see everything has been zeroed out. And then I just want to apply the Screw modifier to it to have it basically, on the first way that I use this, it's just going to create a donut. So I can come over here to modifiers and Screw, and you can see it basically just created a donut shape. But what I need to do is go in the Y direction. So there you go. We just created ourselves a donut. And what it's going to allow me to do is I can define how many iterations. So I can click on that, and that's going to increase. We can then decide how far apart we want the different loops of our, I guess we'll just call it a spring. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key, move this into position. Screw is basically just going to define the height of each of the rows. Then you're going to have the option to basically define if you want the axis to be based off of an object or not. In this situation, I'm not going to do that. But if you did it that way, then in that situation, the height of each iteration would be based off of said object. Angle is going to be the number of degrees covered by an iteration. So it's going to depend upon, well, you can just come in here and play around with it. I'll either play around with it or you can play around with it on your own and see how that's moving around. Both steps and render steps are going to be increased to improve quality. Calc order is going to be used if there are any type of shading problems that you had. Flip is going to flip the shading. So let's go see what it's going to do. Iterations, like I said before, is going to define the number of iterations we're going to have, or how many loops you're going to have inside of here. Both stretch U and stretch V are going to be used if you have 2D images on top of a 3D shape. And merge vertices are going to merge adjacent vertices. Okay, so there's all the different things we can play around with in regards to our Screw modifier. And you can see here I went and changed this on the X plane and how the changes have occurred there. All right, so neat little tool. And now I'm going to jump over and show you a really cool tool, which is the Skin modifier. All right, so this is going to be fun. The Skin modifier is going to provide a quick way for us to create base meshes that we're going to be able to use for sculpting. And up next in my next tutorial, I'm going to cover materials, and then I'm going to try to get into sculpting soon afterwards, because that's whenever Blender becomes a lot of fun. All right, so what I want to do here first off is I want to create a plane. I'll hold this down, move this around on the screen. So let's create a plane. So I'm going to go, whoops, keep hitting the Control A. All right, so there is our plane shape. And I want to switch over to edit mode. So I'm going to go into tab, and then I'm going to go 7 and 5, which is going to give me the top orthographic view, which is what I'm shooting for here. And I'm going to do more with this whenever I do actually cover sculpting, but I think you're going to get the idea how this works here. All right, so I'm going to hit A to deselect everything, and then I'm going to get my box select these two guys over here, and we can go and delete them. So there's that, and then we're going to have this shape here that we can then extrude out basically a wireframe that we're going to be able to turn into a three-dimensional character. And so it's really neat stuff. So I'm going to just grab this guy, box select this, and we can move it over wherever we want to. I'm going to put it right there and just put it right there in the center of our screen. Now what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to select this top part, and I'm going to zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. All right, then I'm going to be able to hit E, and then let's say I want to define like a character, wireframe character that I want to, create character models out of. So I just hit E and I extruded that out. That's going to be the shoulder, and then I'm going to go and extrude out, and this is going to be the upper part of the arm, and then I'm going to extrude out, and then this will be the lower part of the arm. All right, and I probably should have mirrored that, but whatever, I can do it this way also. E, and I'm just going to extrude this out and extrude this out to roughly the same position. Again, I'm just hitting the E key and extruding this out and just making additional parts to this. And it probably makes more sense if this is going to represent the waist, so I'm going to bring that down here. I'm then going to extrude this out, and then this will represent like a hip. Extrude, this will be the upper leg, and extrude, and then this will be the lower leg. And I'll hold down the shift key, move this up into position. I didn't put a head in there, but that doesn't matter. You can see what I'm doing here for a second. All right, so let's move this in here, and E and E. Okay, so what we did here is we created like a wireframe model of a person that we can later on animate and do all kinds of really cool things with. Well, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to box select this whole entire guy like that. And then I can go and apply the skin modifier. So we can go skin right there. And there you can see it is a little person. Now what we're going to be able to do, I hit Z to get a wireframe version of this. Probably going to want to come in here and grab an edge. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to say that I want to subdivide to create additional vertices inside of here. Hit Z again, jump back out of that, and then I'll be able to adjust this guy to make it more like a rib cage if I'd like to do that, which I would. So to do that, I can go Control and A and scale out all of these different parts. So say it's getting to be more like a body, and then I can come in and find like this is the hip area, and I can go Control A again and make this more like a waist. I'm just doing this in a real simple form here right now. I can go and grab this. Let's go like in that area. Again, Control A, and I can shrink the different parts of our body. Control A again, and I could come in and I'm gonna hold down the shift key, come up here, and let's try like the hip area. Control A. Maybe we want to make the hips a little bit thicker. That makes sense. And Control A and make them thicker yet. And then just like build up from there. Okay, you can also come up here to the center area. I'm gonna hit Z so I can see if I can figure out where. There it is right there. This is our central point. Whoops, let's select our vertices so I can select that. Okay, and I could go and extrude out of there. I'm gonna hit Z again, and so I can do another extrude just by hitting E. And let's see if I can create like a neck. I don't know if I caught the right part of the area there that I was aiming for, but I think you get the idea. And whenever I do sculpting, we're going to be able to use the skin modifier to basically save us a lot of time in building these different models that we will then be able to turn into character animations. So just a real brief sort of explanation of how skin works there. You can play around with that and see how that affects other different things. I'll be playing around with these different parts of this skin modifier. But now I'm going to jump over and talk about the Solidify modifier. Okay, so the Solidify modifier is going to add a thickness to our meshes. So let's go and create something. I'm going to create a sphere, and I'm going to cut the top off. So let's switch into this mode and B, and we will unselect everything. Unselect and then B. and then grab it like this. Actually, we do it in the opposite direction also. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that and all the vertices, and then you can see all of the different parts here. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to deselect this so that I can select multiple different vertices through walls and such. And B, and then we will move it up something like that, and zoom in, and B, and delete all those vertices also. So X and vertices. All right, so now we got ourselves a proper bowl, but it's, you know, paper thin. So let's say we wanted to add some thickness to it. How do we do that? Well, we first off come in here and select everything, and then go on modifier, and then we can come in and click on Solidify. And then what we're going to be able to do is define the thickness, right, like this. Just by changing this up a little bit, you're going to see that it is actually creating a proper bowl shape. And if we click on Z, and you can see that it's going to create a wireframe that is pretty much exactly what we're looking for. Let's go back to this, and let's deselect that, and you can see it's a proper bowl type shape. Hold down the Shift key, move this up, and there we go. And of course, you're going to be able to offset. So if you would go and change this from -1 to 1 and hit enter, it's going to put the thickness on the outside. And then, of course, applying is going to be able to have a brand new wireframe automatically generated. So very, very simple way for us to create more three-dimensional shapes just by using this modifier and then clicking on apply. Very useful tool. And since I have this here, why don't I go and also add another modifier to it, which is going to be the Triangulate modifier, which is something I actually don't use very often. I just wanted to cover it. Basically what it does, everything here is a quad polygon, and what this is going to do is force everything to become a triangular shape. So I'm going to go Triangulate, see if we can see the differences in that. So see, if we zoom out of this, it's probably easier to see if we would actually, let me see, what would be the shape I could use? All right, so let's just get rid of it, triangulate, and see how it changed? So I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm gonna zoom in really close. All right, so basically everything is just a simple polygon. And then if we come in here to this add modifier and change it to triangulate, you're gonna see triangles pop up everywhere. See? Triangles everywhere. Now, I actually have never found much use for this modifier. Maybe somebody out there in the comments can tell me why I would ever use this, but it has a tendency to really overcomplicate meshes, and I've had some issues with it. The only thing I could think of is that it might be better in some situations in which we have more pointed shapes, harder edges, not sure, but just wanted to cover it just because it is there and it is an option for us to use. So there is the Triangulate modifier, and now I want to talk about the Wireframe modifier. Hey, why don't we just stick with this all together? All right, so what I want to do now is I am going to, well, let's go and get rid, you know what, let's keep the Triangulate modifier here, and let's add another modifier to it. This one is going to be the Wireframe modifier. And basically what it's going to do is convert a mesh into a wireframe by converting all the edges into four-sided polygons. So what I'm going to do is actually apply these different modifiers. So I'm going to go Tab into our object mode, and I'm going to say apply, and then I'm going to say apply. And then you're going to see, if I hit Z, say I'm in wireframe, and this is solid, this is wireframe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert those wireframes, whoops, let's jump out of that for a second, these wireframes that you see right here, to create sort of a wild three-dimensional mesh bowl. And you're going to see what the wireframe looks like. And so we click on wireframe, and you can see basically it created a four-sided polygon around every single wireframe. If we switch back into the regular, you can see exactly what it did. So there's an example of what you can do with Triangulate. You can sort of complicate up a wireframe, and that's definitely something that the Triangulate modifier does. And this is what the Wireframe modifier does. It basically gives a three-dimensional look to the wireframe that you're working with inside of Blender. All right, so pretty cool stuff. I can definitely see this is providing an easy way for you to create a cage and other different structural objects such as that. And now what I want to do is jump over and talk about the Remesh modifier. Okay, so the remesh modifier is basically going to generate new meshes with different levels of detail to cut down on the needed number of vertices. And it's also going to be used in some situations to add interesting block effects. So if you're a big fan of Minecraft, then the remesh modifier is going to be for you. So I'm in object mode. I'm going to come in here and go Shift A, and I'm just going to show you a couple examples. So we can throw our cone inside of here, for example, and let's zoom in on this. And I'm going to throw the remesh modifier on it, and you can see what it does. So here it is. Remesh, and you can see it distorted it. Basically, we're going to have a couple different options. We're going to have blocks, which is going to have no smoothing to it. We're going to have smooth, which is going to provide for a smooth image with rough edges. And then we're going to have sharp, which is going to be smooth with sharp edges. And you can see all the different options. So there's block. See what I said about Minecraft? It's basically going to create Minecraft with any type of shape that you throw inside of it. The next level of detail is going to be smooth. See, it has rough edges on it. And then you're going to have sharp. And then what we're going to be able to do with this depth option right here is define if we want to increase the resolution. As you can see, as I'm increasing the value there, it's getting sharper and sharper and sharper. Or if I want to decrease the resolution. As you can see how it degrades. And this is going to be good specifically for objects like, let's say your object is really, really far away. Well, you're not going to need a high level of detail with it resolution-wise, but as you zoom in on said object, you can increase the resolution just that much more. So at this level, this is not going to look that much different than if we went and increased the resolution dramatically, which would cause the need for many more in regards to calculations and such. So that's really what this guy is used for. Scale also is going to lower the values and decrease the overall resolution. This guy right here. Here's our smooth shading option, which is going to define if we want to use smooth versus flat shading, just like we have over here in this tools option that we have on the left side of the screen. And then also you're going to be able to remove disconnected pieces depending on the setting you have here inside of the threshold. All right, so just a way to lower and raise the resolution on images to cut down on the number of polygons on your screen. And now what I want to do is jump over and take a look at the subdivision modifier. Okay, so the subdivision surface modifier is going to smooth objects inside of our scene non-destructively, and at the same time, it's also not going to require complex meshes. So let's just go and create something simple. Let's just throw a sphere inside of here, and there we go. Now what we're going to be able to do with this sphere, we'll be able to add a modifier to it. Again, this isn't going to affect the wireframe, just like all of the other modifiers. So subdivision surface. And you can see how much tighter it is. However, the modifier itself is not going to be affected. So let's go and get rid of the modifier, and we'll add the modifier back inside of it again. Okay, and jump back out of that. You can see how smooth it is. Now we're going to be able to define how smooth it's going to be on the final render just by playing around with this, or based off of the view that we have directly here on our screen. And you can see how dramatically smooth that is inside of there. However, you wouldn't want to operate with this object inside of here if you had numerous different objects. Otherwise, it's going to be very straining on your computer. Here, let's go in here and do something kind of useful. So let's get rid of that. We'll come in here and we're going to add the decimate modifier inside of here. And then what I want to do is I want to lower the number of faces. I'm going to go unsubdivide, and let's say we take this down to say 64. That's been a number of iterations on that guy. And then what I'm going to do, and I can apply that, and then I can come into add modifier and back into subdivision surface, and you can see how it's cleaned that up a lot. And then come in and you can see how it's smoothed that object up that was really cut down and degraded a lot. There's basically going to be two ways of smoothing these out. You can use the simple or the Catmull-Clark version. These guys are famous. I think they actually work for Pixar or used to work for Pixar. Not sure. I didn't look into the history of the guys that this feature is named after. But you're more than likely going to use the option on the left rather than the one on the right for obvious reasons. Already talked about view and render. Subdivide UVs is going to be checked if you want to subdivide surfaces with 2D images placed on 3D objects or not. And optimal display is going to show the original wireframe while in wireframe mode. So you can come in and jump into wireframe mode. Whoops, let's escape out of that. And wireframe mode, and then click on this guy and see the differences. All right, so there you go, guys. That is all of the Generate modifiers. Actually, except for one. There was one that I did not cover, which is multi-resolution, and I plan on covering that also whenever I cover sculpting, which is going to happen very soon. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Up next, we're going to talk about materials, which is going to be a lot of fun. And like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.